welcome to another episode of the Basildon Council official podcast, the place where you guys, our residents, can get information about things that are happening around the borough that affect your everyday lives. I'm happy to say that joining us today is Tracey Johnson, who is a Partnership Liaison Officer, and Lucie, Clinical Team Manager with NHS Talking Therapies. Hello, you two, how are you?
Hi. Good.
Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
And we briefly mentioned before, you've done some radio work before, so you these things are okay for you. Lucie, not so much.
I'm much more, on the phone or behind the camera rather than in front of it, I think, yeah.
Excellent. So I wondered if we could start just to sort of get to know you guys a wee bit more. Talk a wee bit more on like sort of our roles and what it is we do. Maybe Tracey, we could start with you in your role.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Tracey Johnson. I'm the Partnership Liaison Officer for NHS Talking Therapies, and we cover Basildon area. So my role is to reach out into the community and let everyone know that NHS Talking Therapies is there to help you with your mental health struggles, stresses and anxieties, to let you know what we offer and how you can come into the service for free and get some help to get yourself back on track.
Brilliant. And Lucie, yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a clinical team manager, so I actually work as a psychological wellbeing practitioner within the service, but predominantly my role now is about managing one of the clinical teams. So I've got a number of therapists there. Yeah, I provide line management and support within the team, so yeah, sort of more of the clinical side.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I wondered if those watching have never heard of NHS Talking Therapies, if we could sort of delve a little bit more into what it is. What do they do?
Yeah, okay, absolutely. So NHS Talking Therapies is therapy for those that are struggling with stresses or anxieties, low moods, and especially as the weather gets a bit darker at 4 o'clock, which is not very nice. People do sometimes feel a bit low and anxious, and you know that can take over your life if you allow it. So we do encourage you to come into our service if you do have those moods, and you will come to our service and have an assessment with a therapist, and the therapist then will work directly with you, helping you with those anxieties and stresses and giving you tools and tips. So when you leave the therapy in recovery, you will be able to go back and take those tools and tips and apply them to you again. So really helping you get on track with those stresses and anxieties that everybody has them in their daily life, but if they become more and more often, then it might be time to get some help.
Yeah, and you mentioned some sort of daily stresses, and as we're now sort of into that autumn wintry period now, like you mentioned, the nights are darker earlier, it's colder, people tend to sort of stay indoors more, they're not sort of socializing as often. Those are factors, aren't they, that can affect our mental health? Yeah,
and it could make you have quite low mood, and then the low mood can continue through a few days and then perhaps longer, a week or longer. And if you are experiencing that low mood and that feeling, that sort of anxious, stressed feeling, please reach out to NHS Talking Therapies, come into our service, it's completely free, and you'll work with some great therapists. We've got a great team, and we'll help get you back on track so you can, feel better and deal with life much better.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you'll talk to a therapist. You'll be assigned a therapist, and they'll work with you. So these things are almost tailor-made for whoever it is that comes in and needs the help. Each person is unique, each person's different, they deal with things differently, and that's something that you guys look at when it comes to dealing with patients.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we offer a variety of different support services, so it's really about looking what each individual person's needs are, really. We're all human beings, aren't we? We all experience feeling low or feeling anxious about things, particularly with life events, whatever that may be, And so we predominantly provide a variety of different things like groups, webinars, online therapy, and as well as sort of one-to-one and working with different people. So it's about finding out what the needs are, and we work particularly around what's called cognitive behavioural therapy. So it's an evidence-based intervention about finding coping strategies for managing anxiety and low mood, and sort of being able to cope better with these daily sort of struggles or things that happen, life events and things like that. So it's about trying to learn some practical coping strategies for managing those.
No, that's brilliant. And you mentioned it being online. Quite a lot of it's online. I wondered, we've recently recently, within the last few years, come out of a global pandemic where everything went online. I wondered whether you could talk a wee bit more on sort of how that affected yourselves, because a lot of us may think of therapy, we think of sat in a room, like maybe sat on one of those therapy chairs, sort of talking to a person, you know, and then all of a sudden we can't go out. So how did NHS Talking Therapies sort of adapt between that, and how does it affect it now? Is it still online now because of that?
Well, we obviously, when the pandemic hit, we removed our service to be completely online because we couldn't see patients face to face because of COVID-19. So it worked very well, actually, and a lot of patients liked it and really feel comfortable with working with Teams or with phone, because they're actually at their own home, so they sometimes feel a little bit more comfortable rather than to have to go out, and you know, then they're talking about sensitive stuff. So it's worked really well, and it is continuing to work very well. A lot of people do opt for it and really find it a preferred choice.
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important that you touched on, is that they are in their own home, they're in their own safe space, and this is a really good way of being able to open up, and you know, maybe it gets to the point where you can see someone in person and feel that, build that confidence to do that. So I think that's fantastic that it's online. I wondered if we could sort of take a moment to talk a wee bit more on different types of therapies that NHS Talking Therapies has that are open to people, if we could sort of speak for that for a sec.
Yeah, so just I'll just open it up with, we obviously deal with the low mood, the anxiety and the depression, but we do also have some programs that are tailored for long-term conditions. So anyone out there struggling with, I'll just take two examples, say a heart problem or maybe diabetes, they have their physical health provider that is they are working with, but sometimes that does get on top of you mentally, and you know, you can get really stressed and anxious and really quite down. I do go out to quite a lot of groups that with long-term conditions and work with them, and sometimes they really are quite down because they're dealing with this physical condition. So we have some programs to help them deal with the mental side of that. So helping them, you know, get back on track, and again, like Lucie said, giving them the coping mechanism, the tools and the strategies to help them keep on top of that mentally, so they can deal with their physical condition better. So they're really good and very popular and have helped many people. So of course they're free, and if you want to come into the service and access that, it's the same way, which I'll explain later. So yeah, they really are helping. And the other thing that we have started to do is if you come into our service and you're in therapy with us for obviously whatever reason, your anxiety or your depression or your low mood, and you're struggling in the job space, you're either looking for a job or you have a job, and you know, there are some issues around there, we now have a team of employment coaches. So whilst you have your therapist and you're working with your therapist, you will also be assigned an employment coach. And the employment coach will work with you on the job side of it, whether that is you're looking for a job or you just want to volunteer, or whether you're having issues with your current employer that, you know, are small issues, not legal issues, that we can help with. So that is really helping the person get back on track. So yeah, that's a great new service that we are now delivering.
That employment thing surprised me. We were talking beforehand, just briefly before we were recording, and that was something that really sort of took me back, that was something that you guys would help with. And I've mentioned before, oftentimes if we're having one of those days where we're just not quite, we're not there, and we need a day to ourselves, sort of a mental health day, that can be a really daunting phone call to have with your employer. You know, it's all good to say, oh, I've got flu and I can't get out of bed. That one's easy to go, but to say it's just today's not the day, you know, that's brilliant that you can have a sort of an employment coach that can help you manage that and maybe even word that a bit better.
Yeah, so the employment coaches are really good. It's a new addition to the service, and yeah, they're going to be helping a lot of people in lots of different ways.
And so you mentioned some other therapies. You mentioned sort of cognitive behavioural therapy earlier. So what sort of other areas can we go into with that?
So it's really about looking at what's called guided self-help. So it's about finding coping strategies. We're all different, aren't we? We all experience anxiety and low mood in different ways, and we all have different things that are going on for us. So it's about finding some coping strategies for manage that. It's quite a practical type therapy. So things like we have webinars. So a webinar is something they can do at home. It's an online version, but with some of our webinars, the camera and microphone are turned off, so it's still, you know, confidential. It's sort of a safe space. They have workbooks, interactive. So it's about regularly attending and gaining some information and learning some coping strategies for managing. Like I say, it's very much that practical tools, finding tools and strategies for managing. It could be we have these sort of workshop things which are a bit more interactive, particularly around long-term health conditions and things like that. So, talking to others that might be in a similar situation to you. And also online with, we have computerised cognitive behavioural therapy. So, much more flexible approach. It's sort of videos, quite interactive, can be done via an app. So it's very much that sort of interactive, as well as sort of with the therapist can do some, like say, guided self-help and do those sorts of things. So yes, it's about encouraging people to come, have an assessment and identify what their current difficulties are and how we might be able to help them find the right way of accessing therapy. And maybe sometimes other people might find that there are other services that we work closely with in the community that we might be able to signpost to or refer to if that's necessary. It's about finding the most appropriate service for people at this time. So
yeah, one thing that sort of is sort of jumping out at me as we were talking is how much an impact mental health has on just our everyday. You mentioned sort of like with long-term sort of medical issues and whatnot, and how that can sometimes just make you feel down sometimes. You just have a bad day and you just feel anxious about something that's maybe coming up, and that can then build up. It just strikes me as something, as mental health is such an everyday thing that we deal with, and it's so important that we recognise that and understand that.
It is, and there's lots of different things out there. So families, children, our service is for 16 plus. So there are some families that are struggling, some young adults that are struggling that need help. We have also on our website, which we will put out later, have some great podcasts that they can listen to for free, and they're delivered by our clinical staff. For example, there's some on sleep, there's something on menopause, there's something on exam stress, there's something on coping with family life. So because all of these things impact into your mental health, like you just said, there is something in every day. So we've got these podcasts on there that are just really good tips. Even if you didn't want to come into the therapy, you felt you just wanted to listen to something, those podcasts are really helpful. So our services from a 16 plus, you can self-refer yourself. The one important thing to remember is you can self-refer into the service. You do not need to go to your GP. If you did go to the GP would refer you to us anyway. So it's kind of bypassing the GP just to come in and get help with your mental health.
Yeah, and that's something that it's an everyday thing. If you're having a couple of days, even a week maybe, of just feeling, I just can't get out of this slump, like, have a look.
Yeah, if you don't address those slumps, and then like a week turns into a month and a month turns into 3 months, it is much harder to pull yourself out of that slump. Whereas if you come with us, even if you listen to some of the podcasts, those tools and strategies are there. And then if you kind of embed those into your life, it will help you going forward. And then you'll think, oh, actually, I'm really having a bad day, and I remember this is what I do to help myself, and it does work.
Well, so on that, in terms of like trying to get yourself out that slump before it gets into a giant hole, Lucie, is there any way we could sort of prevent a lot of these things? Is there things that we can do to maybe make us, I don't know, pick us up a little bit? How do we recognise these things and try and prevent these things from becoming worse?
Yeah, so a lot of, like I say, cognitive behavioural therapy is really about looking at the things that we think and the things that we do. Our behaviours is things we do or don't do. So that might be things like, going to the gym, or like you say, if it's getting dark and we're not going out so much. All these small things actually have quite a big impact on our well-being, both physically and mentally. So it can be sometimes just looking at some of those things, addressing what things you enjoy, perhaps what you're not doing so much at the moment. So yeah, just really about finding those coping strategies and finding those tools that help to improve how we're feeling. And we're all human, aren't we? We all experience life events no matter who we are, and I'm sure all of us have experienced times of stress and anxiety or worry or low mood at different times. So it's about learning how do we manage in those things so it doesn't impact on our day-to-day life, such as our work or family relationships. Mental health can have an impact on all of those things. So if we can learn some ways to help to manage and get a little bit more control over those things, then hopefully that can improve the impact and reduce the impact it has on sort of day-to-day life, really.
And for anyone who maybe has never gone down this road before, this avenue, they may have gone to a doctor because maybe they've got an ulcer or something like that. Those are ones that are easy to manage. If no one's ever sort of gone down this road before, how might you sort of encourage someone to just try it? Go for it. Therapy's okay. It's okay to talk. Like, how might we encourage someone to do that?
I think, we can look at, first of all, doing an assessment. So talk to one of our therapists who can do an assessment, and that could be online. Sometimes you're a bit nervous about picking up the phone, talking to someone. We've got digital platforms where you can put a lot of that information in online, and that can be a really, really good way of accessing the service and just starting off. Obviously, then you will potentially speak to somebody and sort of talk a little bit through options. But sometimes you can get initially a lot of what you want to on the online form. So yeah, just finding out what your current difficulties are, and hopefully we can find some ways to sort of
and it is completely confidential, isn't it?
Yeah, so there are strict confidentiality rules around therapy, so it's completely confidential. And we have made it quite easy, like Lucie just said. Through our website there is a chat bot that comes up. So if you access our website, which is vitahealthgroup.co.uk, and we'll put these out obviously at the end of the podcast, there is a chatbot that pops up a bit like when you're shopping or whatever, and then they're asking you questions there, and then you can access into the service for an assessment through our chatbot, and that's a really quick and easy way to get into the service. Of course, there's the phone number, and there's a form online, but the chatbot is there. They'll ask you questions, and it's prompting you to answer to help you. So yeah, a lot of people use that, and we're finding that is a really good tool.
So if people are interested, if they've watched this, they've never tried it before, and they think, do you know what, I think I'll give it a go, how can people, you mentioned the sort of the website, how can people get into NHS Talking Therapies? Where can they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to give us a go, NHS Talking Therapies, the website, which we will put on the list, is vitahealthgroup.co.uk, and as I just mentioned, that's where your chatbot will come up, and you can answer some questions, and then they will access into your assessment there. The phone number is 01268 977 171. Give us a call. And then you can come into the service that way. Or on the website there is also a form that you can fill out, and that will be submitted into us. So we've made it as easy as possible. It's 3 easy ways. It's 16 plus, it's free, and there's no need to go to the GP. The GP would refer to us. So we've made it, like we said, we tried to make it as easy as possible for people, because they may be feeling a bit anxious about even coming in. So, just encourage people to take that step and come and get some help.
And I think something that I think is something we can all get behind is if you're feeling a bit down, if you're feeling lonely, or if there's something not quite right, it's okay to talk, and please do talk, please do open up, find help. These are fantastic resources to look into, and even if it is a case of just talking to a family member, that's a first step in getting help.
Yeah, absolutely. Do reach out to get help. Don't sit there because it would just escalate. We hope that our sort of strapline is making people better. We want to make people better so that they can live fulfilling lives and without dealing, or if they do have anxiety, they know how to deal with it.
And with the NHS Talking Therapies, we use evidence-based treatment. So, there's lots of evidence to suggest the effectiveness of the therapies that we provide. So,
that's good.
It's about finding the most appropriate service, really.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for coming in today to talk to us. I really do appreciate it. I think it's been such a really interesting, insightful conversation, and this has been so helpful for those that are watching to see that there are options. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling low, there are ways to get help, and you're not alone. So thank you very much for coming in, the two of you. I really do appreciate your time.
Thanks for having us.
So thank you very much for watching. I really would like to reiterate, of course, if you are feeling depressed or down, or you just need to talk to someone, please do use the help. We've got links to NHS Talking Therapies and all their access there. So please do access those and get yourself some help. Thank you very much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.